Today, Nvidia is a multi-trillion-dollar empire. The silicon they design forms the bedrock of the global artificial intelligence industry, powering everything from advanced medical research to generative AI. But in 1996, the company was exactly 30 days away from total bankruptcy. They were burning through their cash reserves, they had just laid off half their workforce, and their survival rested on a single failing product. That product was Nvidia's very first chip, the NV1. It was supposed to capture the emerging PC graphics market, but it turned out to be a commercial disaster because it relied on an architecture that the rest of the industry rejected. This animation shows the problem. Nvidia bet heavily on rendering 3D shapes using four-sided quadrilaterals, but the rest of the industry, cemented by Microsoft, adopted three-sided triangles as the universal standard. This created a hard technical wall. Hardware built for quads cannot process triangle-based code. This left Nvidia's young CEO, Jensen Huang, with a brutal choice. He could either lie to his biggest financial partner to keep the cash flowing for a few more months, or he could walk into their office and admit total defeat. Huang boarded a flight to Japan to meet with Shoichiro Irimajiri, the CEO of Sega, which at the time was Nvidia's primary partner and customer. During that meeting, Huang delivered an absolute confession. He told Irimajiri that Nvidia's architecture was a dead end. He explicitly advised Sega to drop Nvidia from their console project and find another vendor to supply their graphics chips. But immediately after torpedoing his own contract, Huang made an audacious request. He asked Sega to take the money they owed for the canceled project and convert it into a $5 million equity investment in his failing company. Without it, he admitted, Nvidia would die. It is a staggering thing to look an executive in the eye, admit you failed them, and then ask for $5 million. Where does a founder acquire the absolute lack of ego and the grit required to make that plea? Finding that level of grit requires a specific kind of training, and for Jensen Huang, that training began decades earlier, in a harsh environment far removed from a boardroom. In 1973, Southeast Asia was consumed by political instability. To escape the growing unrest in Thailand, a 9-year-old Huang and his older brother were sent across the world to live with relatives in Washington state. Hoping to provide the boys with a structured education, their uncle enrolled them in the Oneida Baptist Institute in rural Kentucky. He made the assumption it was a prestigious boarding academy. It was not. Oneida was a strict religious reform school built to manage difficult and troubled youth. The environment was austere, isolating, and completely unforgiving. As the youngest kid on campus, Huang was a frequent target. He endured daily ethnic slurs, physical threats from older boys, and was assigned to clean the school's dormitory toilets every single day. To survive, he had to adapt. His roommate was a 17-year-old covered in knife scars who couldn't read. So Huang struck a deal. He taught the older boy how to read, and in exchange, he received lessons on how to bench press. This environment stripped away any sense of entitlement. It forced a young boy to figure out how to process intense physical and emotional discomfort, navigate unfairness, and do it all without complaining. A few years later, living in Oregon, Huang took his first job in America, a dishwasher and busboy at a local Denny's diner. Most teenagers would view the dish pit as grueling, low-status work. Huang leaned into it. He made a quiet vow to become the most efficient dishwasher that restaurant had ever seen. He developed a rigorous operational methodology to handle the constant pressure of a busy restaurant. He lived by a strict rule. He never left his station empty-handed, and he never returned empty-handed. 2 decades later, in 1993, Huang found himself back inside a Denny's. Sitting in a booth in San Jose with 2 colleagues and $40,000 to their names, they sketched out the initial business plan for Nvidia. This former dishwasher built Nvidia's operational DNA on the assumption that conditions would be brutally hard from day one. Which brings us back to 1996, inside that boardroom in Japan. Sega's CEO sat across from Huang, weighing the unprecedented request for a $5 million bailout. Against all conventional business logic, Irimajiri said yes. He bypassed internal board opposition and converted Sega's contract into an equity investment, giving Nvidia exactly 6 months of cash to survive. Irimajiri, an engineer himself, saw a founder who refused to hide behind excuses. He recognized an executive with the technical depth to understand the failure, and the honesty to admit it, even at the cost of his own company. With that 6-month lifeline, Nvidia abandoned their pride. They scrapped the quadrilateral architecture they had spent years building, and pivoted entirely to the industry-standard triangles. That pivot resulted in the Riva 128 chip. It was a commercial hit that pulled the company back from the brink, and laid the architectural groundwork for the modern GPU. Today, as the CEO of a multi-trillion-dollar company, Huang is frequently asked to reflect on his journey from the Denny's dish pit to the top of the tech world. His advice to young graduates is highly unconventional. When speaking to Stanford students recently, he didn't wish them luck or success. He explicitly told them, "I wish upon you pain and suffering." His logic is straightforward. People who graduate with very high expectations inherently lack resilience. When the inevitable crises of building a company hit, those high expectations make them fragile. Nvidia survived because their founder was trained from childhood to treat suffering and humiliation as the raw material required for survival.